trust me, this incident could have led to World War III. It involves a Russian pilot who actually did try to shoot down an RAF surveillance plane, which had a crew of up to 30 people on board. This Russian pilot thought that the Kremlin had given him permission to open fire. By the luck of God, he missed. And then there was another missile, so that, the plane's 2 missiles under the wing. So he wanted to let that one go as well. Luckily, that fell off, so it malfunctioned. The miss was characterized in an official statement as a misfunction, a malfunction of the aircraft. It wasn't. This pilot thought he had permission to open fire on an RAF surveillance plane. Terrifying, but the sort of thing that can happen in these circumstances. Let's talk to someone who I think will identify with this greatly, a former RAF fighter pilot, Tim Davies. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, Kev. How you doing?
I'm all right. What's your take on this? I mean, pilots, I suppose it could happen on both sides, getting their orders or their instructions are all wrong. He opened fires. Thank God he missed. If he'd have hit that plane, I mean, all hell would have broken loose, right?
Yeah, we only got 3 of them as well, and they're pretty expensive. It's a listening aircraft, communication platform that obviously was flying out of Cyprus over the Black Sea, and obviously was targeted by these Su-27s. It looks like the missile that was fired was a longer range R-27. Well, both, it seems. I think what you've mentioned there, the communication between the 2 pilots, seems to me that it was an intentional act that luckily wasn't successful.
Yeah, and apparently the other pilot in the Russian plane got furious with the guy for firing it because he thought he was getting trigger happy. I think this pilot got rather excited. When you're up there, I mean, is there something inside of you just that you would love to get that order, right, go to war, fight, open fire? Is there something in pilots that is yearning for that moment?
Well, no, I don't want to get killed. I don't particularly want to kill anyone. That's not what Royal Air Force pilots do.
Oh, not Royal Air Force, Russian pilots.
Well, it's interesting. Now, that aircraft you talk about is now escorted by 2 Typhoons, and you don't want to mess around with Typhoons. I mean, there's not many more capable aircraft in the world than a Royal Air Force Typhoon flown by a Royal Air Force pilot. But no, you obviously want to practice your skill set. We all understand that. I think the problems that the Russians have in what is an exceptionally confusing air picture, that's the other thing we have to remember, because, of course, war is very confusing, is they tend to fly with one very senior pilot and one very junior pilot. And we do something similar, but of course, if you're not getting the flying hours, then of course you do get a bit rusty. And this guy may well have heard something, and he thought, I believe, that he was declared as a target, and he felt he had the right to engage. And that seems to be what happened in this particular case.
You talked about the confusing picture up in the air. We'll talk about the Ukraine war. I'm assuming, by the way, Tim, that this RAF plane, surveillance plane, had the right to be there. Black Sea isn't actually Russian territory, is it? So the confusion would be, why would this Russian plane think it? If we were over Russian territory, then I assume the picture would be different. But if we're not over Russian territory, why would this Russian pilot think this is the time to open fire?
Yeah, totally valid. So here's the thing that I used to do when I was flying Tornadoes in the Air Force, is try and look at it from the enemy's perspective. In our narrative now that the Western media puts out, of course, is that the West is good and Russia's bad. But in Russia, it's the opposite, as you can imagine. Russia's good and the West is bad. In fact, Russia sees us as an imperialist aggressor. The interventions into Iraq, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, we could go on. And then they go into Ukraine, and all of a sudden the West kicks off. So from their point of view, we are the aggressor in that particular situation, as abhorrent as that may sound to us. And I'm not defending anyone.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So, of course, the aircraft is listening over the Black Sea. It listens to the battlefield. It identifies with the electromagnetic spectrum, everything coming out with it, everything coming out, even a tank starting his engine, or a radar dish, or emissions from a radio, or someone using a mobile phone. And it collects the information and it passes it to the Ukrainian military. So, of course, if you're a Russian pilot and you're suffering losses on your side, then that's a pretty good thing to go and kill, because those losses will be, well, diminished or even stopped. So you can see from the Russian side, taking out something like that is in international waters or international air, whatever you want to call it, you know, fair enough.
Yeah.
It is in their interest to do something like that, most definitely, yeah.
Have you been in any of those circumstances where you can see not enemy jets, but jets from other countries, what you might call hostile countries like Russia? Have you ever seen anything like that? And can you hear each other? Do pilots from both sides talk to each other? Would this Russian plane have warned the RAF first, if you don't get out of this airspace, we'll shoot? Is there any communication? Have you been in any circumstances, anything like this?
Yeah, so I was in southern Iraq over a town of Basra with the wingman, and we were doing some work there looking at pipelines and some other aspects that I probably can't go too much into, but we're working very close to the Iranian border, and Iran did send a couple of aircraft up against us to dissuade us of doing the task that we were doing. And you're told about it, you know, you're told from our ground control, these guys are this far away, and you know what range their weapons have as well, and it's not healthy to hang around in those kind of situations. So the rivet joint aircraft, they would have known those aircraft were there. As I think we've heard, it was probably listening to the communications between them. It is a reasonably well-defended aircraft, of course, insofar as it would have countermeasures itself. However, it's pretty unprotected. It seems to be a beyond visual range missile, so which means you can't see the aircraft. So you'd lock it on the radar. You'd look for a declaration of hostile intent, which it doesn't seem that the Russians had at this particular time. And then, of course, once you get the clearance, you can engage. But, yeah, it's a difficult situation, that one, isn't it? But I'll be honest with you, though, Kev, if we go into these conflicts, they become murkier and murkier. How long are they going to go on for? And these things are going to happen. I can see it happening. We can all see it happening. And maybe these are the things we should think a bit more carefully about before we enter into these.
I'll tell you what, Tim, you're definitely the man for this story. Just to finalise it, to sum up, this was a frightening incident, and thank God that Russian pilot missed.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. There's typhoons with the aircraft now. But I'll be honest with you, Kev, you've got to look at it from the Russian perspective. That's all I'm saying in this. And that's how I look at it as well. Why would the Russians be doing this? Well, because we're doing that as well. So it is this very confusing air picture. And I think there were very good lines of communication established, weren't there, between our government and the Russian government to say, hang on, is this a mistake or not? And I think the Russians did come back and say, look, this was not intentional. We were not even looking at doing anything like this whatsoever. So hopefully if those lines of communication are maintained, then we shouldn't have too much more of this in the future. But of course, we are literally supplying Ukraine as NATO. And as far as Russia is concerned, that probably is the definition of hostile intent. Absolutely.